Hi Usha, hi girls. Put on mute, okay.
Namaste. On behalf of Chairperson Usharani Manne and her committee, I welcome our respected guests, Sri Prasad and Sriram Karri, special invitees, viewers, and flow members, to an afternoon of revelations, of reflection, and recommendations. The food we eat, the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the climate that makes Earth habitable all come from nature. And today, our mother is nudging us awake. It's time to wake up. It's time to take notice. It's time to take action. Today, on World Environment Day, let's pledge to make time for nature. Our guest today has a very special affinity with nature, the reason why we chose this date too. Let's start the afternoon with salutations to Ma Saraswati by EC member Radhika Sriram.
या शुभ्रवस्त्रान्विता या वीणावरदण्डमण्डितकरा या श्वेतपद्मासना या ब्रह्माच्युतशङ्करप्रभृतिभिर्देवैः सदा पूजिता सा मां पातु सरस्वती भगवती निःशेषजाड्यापहा.
Thank you, Radhika. You've made sure we have the goddess of learning's presence amidst us today. Thank you so much. Deepa Jyoti Parabrahma, Deepa Jyoti Janardhana. I request our special guest, Sri Prasad, Sriram Karri Garu, and Chairperson Usharani Manne to do the Deeparadhana. Spotlight, please. Prasad Garu, can you light the lamp?
I think it's already lit. You have a matchbox? Okay.
Sriram Garu? Thank you, Usha. And now over to Chairperson Usharani Manne to share her message with us.
Eminent guests, Devi Prasad and Sriram Karri, special invitees, respected past chairs, and my dear fellow flow members. Namaste. Today's talk is something we had planned last year itself. Of course, in my imagination, it was on a well-designed stage, in a half-full, eager minds, and delicious foods on the other side. But I realize now, hidden in every difficulty is an opportunity. How else would so many of our members and other guests have the opportunity of viewing this session? So yes, though we are all craving to meet and celebrate as before, chances like these enlightening sessions, be it Sister Shivani's message of positivity or Upasana Kamineni's exhortation for being the boss of oneself, or today's talk that we are all so eagerly looking forward to, these are some things we should be grateful for. I thank both our illustrious guests for so graciously accepting our invitation to join us here at FLOW. FLOW is an organization where minds, hearts, and hands come together voluntarily to learn from each other, support one another, and lend a helping hand to those who are not as fortunate as we are. I'm happy that we have not let go of that spirit. In fact, I have seen a greater outpouring of it in recent times. our social outreach team is swelling in numbers, with so many hands going up to pitch in. Since the last time we met virtually, we have made good progress in the areas of incubation and learning. We has extended support to our members by facilitating collateral-free loans for small and MSME entrepreneurs. This is a collaborative offering from State Bank of India and Ministry of MSME. The letter has been sent to your mailboxes. Do respond and avail generating additional working capital to restart your business post-lockdown. Learning is never-ending stream. We have been in constant touch with leading management schools of the country since the last 6 to 8 months, and the efforts are bearing fruit now. IIM Ahmedabad has designed an 8-day online management development program that will train participants in launching new business and managing small and medium businesses. IIM Shillong is offering us a 5-day online general management program of 10 hours in all. The fee and other details for the courses will be shared with you soon. Seats are limited to make the experience more personal and will be allotted on first come first serve basis in both the cases. So hurry and apply. Our participation to the central government's Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushal Yojana in collaboration with McLean Group will take off from September. These 3 months theory and practical courses will make participants ready for employment in the hospitality sector in the areas of F&B, housekeeping, and kitchen stewarding. Coming to our agri-empowerment efforts, the idea of a possible collaboration between Indian Institute of Millets Research and FLO Hyderabad came up when we spoke to our member entrepreneurs working in the field of agriculture and millet-based products. Most of them wanted to expand their portfolio of products, but were looking for technical help or third-party infrastructure to outsource certain processes. We identified IIMR and approached them with a proposal. I'm happy to share that IIMR has consented to our proposal, and we are on the verge of signing an MOU with them for technology transfer, product development, training in good agricultural practices, and market linkages aimed at supporting and enabling women across all levels, grassroots, blue collar, and white collar, in the fast growing area of millets production. We must be doing something very right at FLO Hyderabad. We have had so many applications pouring in for new memberships. We held 3 rounds of interviews in the last 3 weeks and selected 53 members across FLO and by FLO. We will be conducting a few more rounds of interviews. So, viewers who are not yet FLO members, this is your opportunity to be part of an India-wide ecosystem for women. FLO is so much about networking for professional, business, and personal growth. FLO Marketplace is a vibrant platform that can change the spotlight on your brands and services. Both members and non-members can advertise on FLO Marketplace. Grab the opportunity to reach out to a captive audience and grow your business with us. For more activities on our activities and initiatives towards enabling our vision to live empowered, here is a brief video. IT team, video please. Thank you. My field of work, instrumentation and process automation, has made me an integral part of the Indian life sciences industry for 2.5 decades now, during which time I have observed with awe the trajectory of Dr. Reddy's labs, a brand India and US and us Hyderabadis can be so proud of. A brand known for its ethics, sustainable impact, and of course for its innovation and far-reaching impact. Our guest today has been at its helm for 30 years, steering it relentlessly in all the right directions. His legacy, to put it simply, is unparalleled. In conversation with him is well-known writer, author, columnist, and another Hyderabadi to be proud of, Sriram Karri. Like you, I can't wait for the session to begin. But before that, my team will tell us more about our two dynamic guests. Thank you.
Thank you, Usha. As co-chairman and managing director, Sri G.V. Prasad leads the core team at Dr. Reddy's. He is credited, and rightly so, for its transformation from a mid-sized domestic operation into a worldwide pharmaceutical conglomerate. Prasad's emphasis on research, business ethics, and leaner corporate structures has helped shape Dr. Reddy's into an organization recognized globally for scientific innovation, progressive people practices, and high standard of corporate governance. Prasad leads the company's sustainability initiatives to reduce its ecological footprint. As part of his actionable imperatives for sustainability, G.V. Prasad is directly involved with the activities of the World Wildlife Fund, APN Telangana chapter, Wildlife Trust of India, and other conservation-oriented organizations. G.V. Prasad is a board member of learning institutions such as ISB and Ashoka University. He has also previously served on the boards of IIT Hyderabad and SV University. He is the immediate past chairperson of CII National Committee on Pharmaceuticals and has previously been the chairman of the CII National Committee on Environment and the Intellectual Property Committee. He has recently been appointed as the Honorary Consul of the Kingdom of Belgium in Hyderabad. In his illustrious 3-decade career, G.V. Prasad has received innumerable awards and accolades. He has been named as one of the top 20 leaders on the Medicine Makers 2020 Power List. He has received the V. Krishnamurti Award for Excellence by the Center for Organizational Development in 2019. He was recognized as the Boundary Breaker Leader at CEO Awards 2018, was listed among the top 50 CEOs that India ever had in 2017, and was fated as one of the top 5 most valuable CEOs of India by Business World. And these are just a few of the several other awards he has received. Ladies and gentlemen, that's just touching upon the fringes of a highly accomplished guest today. We are just a few minutes away from a very interesting conversation with him. Over now to Bindu Reddy, Joint Treasurer, for an introduction to Sriram Karri.
Thank you, Priya. Our moderator today for our moderator for today is Mr. Sriram Karri, an acclaimed novelist, journalist, and orator. His debut novel, Autobiography of a Mad Nation, a bestseller, was longlisted for the Man Asian Literary Prize. His first book, The Spiritual Supermarket, was longlisted for the Crossword Book Award in the non-fiction category. His new novel, One Farmer Less, is due for publication. He is currently the resident editor of Deccan Chronicle. His writings have appeared in the New York Times, The Guardian, BBC, Huffington Post, Asia Times, Economic Times, The New Indian Express, among many others. He is often invited as a speaker at panel discussions and TV debates. He gives and moderates talks. He runs an intellectual initiative, Hyde Park, a platform for open conversations with authors, leaders, journalists, and other prominent public figures. In earlier avatars, he has led communications teams at Satyam, Indian School of Business, TCS, Infosys, MagnaQuest, and Call Health. He also co-founded a successful tech startup, Now Pause, over 14 years ago. Welcome, Sriram Garu.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bindu. On behalf of our guest today, we are making a small donation to United Way Hyderabad. IT team, felicitation certificates, please. Thank you, Pranay. Over now to Sri G.V. Prasad, Sriram Karri, and Usharani Manne.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this fascinating way of doing an event. I'm a big fan of the FLO. I've had the privilege actually of joining two events before, and never would we have thought we'll be participating in an event with you sitting in our homes and offices. These are unimaginable times. I don't know what we were thinking December 31st about the new year, but I don't think any one of us thought this could be 2020, a number that says is all about hindsight. I had two ways to begin this conversation. I had written down very smart points. The first point was about the World Environment Day, but Priyaji anticipated and took that away. I had another way of starting this, and this was about talking about how in normal circumstances we would all have met at a nice five-star hotel and there'd have been these lovely samosas and coffee and tea. But Usha Garu anticipated that and took it away. So I'm kind of lost as a moderator on how to start. And therefore, I'd like each one of you to just for a second think about it. The last time a disaster, a pandemic of this scale happened over 100 years ago, the world was a very different place. Today, where we are, both in terms of a crisis breaking out in a city called Wuhan in China and reaching 225 countries within 30 days. And we sitting in Hyderabad, locked down in our homes because of something that originated there. On the other hand, while sitting at home, to be able to reach out and talk like this, I don't think in any pandemic before, hundreds of people would have come together to sit at home safely and be engaged in a conversation like this. Both the fact that coronavirus, the pandemic that came from China and struck the whole world, puts us locked down in our homes and yet enables us to have a conversation like this seamlessly are gifts of globalization, of capitalism. In my conversation with Mr. Prasad, I will broadly structure a couple of questions on globalization, capitalism. Then I'll move to organization. I'll move to the crux of it, sustainable leadership, how to create, which is really where his illustrious career has been shaped in creating an organization the whole world knows and Hyderabad and India is proud of. And then towards the end, we'll try and have him speak a little bit about his personal hobbies, styles, and end with a few policy related questions before opening to the audience. So I will go to you, Mr. Prasad, with the first question, which is to extend the contextual introduction of sorts I hope I have set. Every time there is a crisis, whether it's the 2008 global economic crisis or the few ones before, we keep asking, what is the future of globalization? What is the future of capitalism? Or has it reached a point where capitalism itself is no longer sustainable in the classical sense? Or does it need to introspect and drastically redesign itself for it to make sense for more stakeholders across the world? In the shadow of coronavirus, and an economy that's perhaps been flattened globally. Ms. Prasad, my first question for you. How do you see the future of globalization and capitalism?
Thank you very much. Firstly, let me thank the hosts, Usha, Priya, Sriram, for moderating this. I really have pleasure in meeting you all virtually. It's nice to interact with so many leaders, women leaders who have made a mark for themselves. And I know how difficult building a business is, sustaining it and growing it. So I want to appreciate all of you women leaders for being out there and showing the strength to build a business and succeed in whatever you're doing, and also the immense social service that you, your organizations and Flow are doing. So thank you again for having me. Sriram, you talked about this crisis and capitalism and globalization. These are very relevant topics. And for some reason or the other, I've been thinking a lot about all of these. First, let me start with capitalism. Capitalism is the only system that has worked for business, for people, and for world. Every other system has failed. So we don't have any other system other than capitalism today in the world today that works. Of course, there are shades of capitalism. There's pure unbridled capitalism. There is moderate capitalism. There is conscious capitalism, and there is managed capitalism, like in China. All said and done, capitalism is still the only tool which can create the greatest good for society. Take a significant problem, find a solution, and make the solution available to as many people in the world as possible. This is what capitalism does very well. So I think capitalism is here to stay. It's not going away. But capitalism has to change also. Given everything that we are seeing, unbridled pursuit of growth, pursuit of consumption, pursuit of wealth has really destroyed our way of life, has destroyed the planet, destroyed the environment, destroyed many, many things. So somewhere we have to find a way to fix capitalism. And I'm not sure if the political system is ready to do this, or if businessmen themselves are ready to do this, whether the stock markets will allow us to do this. But we all know that it is inevitable that we have to change our way of life. Yes, we've been hit by pandemic, and we are all seeing the consequences of this because it was so sudden. But there's also a gradual deterioration of lifestyle, of our lives, everything around us. We've lost forests, we've lost rivers, we've lost the purity of the air we breathe. There's so many things that we are slowly losing, which will eventually see the end of our human race or human species. In many ways, we have been a victim of our own success. The success of capitalism has driven the planet to the brink. Forgive me for being a little pessimistic, but being a wildlife enthusiast, I go to various spots around the world, and I see the destruction visibly. So that's about capitalism. Now, globalization is an offshoot of capitalism. For capitalism, you produce goods wherever that's lowest cost to make them and sell them wherever you get the best realization. And an outcome of that is that you globalize your operations, globalize your markets, and you drive growth. So as long as capitalism is there, globalization will be there. Only thing, if we don't regulate both of these, we will be hit again and again. Pandemic 2019, COVID 2019 is not the last of what we will see. Nature will come back with force in many different ways. So I think as business people, we have to consider what are we doing to this planet, the activity that we do, the operations that we manage, are they sustainable? Is the impact that we create on the earth, is it positive or negative? The consumption that we have, I mean, we're all, I'm as guilty as any of us. We all have our fancies, our need for large cars, large homes, holidays, use and throw kind of lifestyle. So it's time, I think this pandemic and this crisis raises an important question for us. As a species, do we need to change how we live our lives? And I think, I'd like to end it there and take your next question.
Thank you. I'll amazed as a journalist, as an editor. I've met so many businessmen for the last 25 years. And I personally, as a very, very passionate advocate for capitalism as the only moral system possible to man, practical to man. I'm very amazed to meet you first time in my life through this virtual platform, Ms. Prasad, and hear a businessman stand so strongly for capitalism. At the same time, in a rather intrepid manner, say that it's a system that needs to relook at itself, reprioritize, especially on a day like the World Environment Day, or vis-a-vis sustainability, vis-a-vis other stakeholders, etc. Now I'd like to move you to that area for which I think everybody in the audience is very keen to hear. While the domains, the business verticals, the areas are different of all the members of FLO, one thing that commonly brings us all together here is they're all into business. They're all entrepreneurs. They're all leaders. They're building businesses. Some of them have already built very successful businesses. Some of them are trying to make it larger. What they like to know from you, and as Usha just said, your organization is something we as Hyderabadis are very, very proud of. It's a iconic kind of statement of what is possible in a very global kind of a context, in a very scientific kind of a field. You have reached to the world with this name DRL, and so much greater days are ahead for you. So take us through what it takes to build a great business. What is this DNA that makes some companies like yours so successful? Talk about the ethics, the challenges, the difficulties you have faced both individually and as a leadership team. And what is the word of inspiration you would like to leave for everybody who would like to create an organization like yours too?
So firstly, thank you for your very kind words. We are one of the companies in Hyderabad which is successful. There are many companies which are successful. So I don't want to appropriate anything which I don't deserve or we don't deserve. But I'd like to take you through a little bit of Dr. Reddy's before my time, before I joined the company, and then how we evolved. And along the way, the lessons we learned, the values we embraced, and the principles that we espouse. This company was founded by Dr. Reddy, who was a scientist entrepreneur. He had started a couple of ventures before he started Dr. Reddy's. They were partially successful, but it wasn't very sustainable. In '85, he created Dr. Reddy's along with another company called Cheminar in '85. Dr. Reddy was a very remarkable individual. Some of you may know him. He was a scientist, entrepreneur, a pioneer, wanting to do things for the first time. He was not driven by money. Money was the last thing on his mind. In fact, if you look at how he managed his money, there was a lot of things which shouldn't have been done, but he didn't care. It wasn't about money. And then later on in his life, he became a philanthropist. So part of his DNA of being a pioneer, being a scientific person, wanting to do good in society, these have become part of Dr. Reddy's DNA. So as in many companies, the founder's influence is very strong. It lasts for a much longer period, even after him. And that is one of the reasons why Dr. Reddy's is considered a good organization in the industry. That's number one. Number two, as Dr. Reddy's, after Dr. Reddy, Satish and me came into the management of the company, we were there already. I was there from almost day one. I was on the board of the company. I was in a full-time role from 1990. And Satish came later in 95 or 96, I don't remember. The family, it was a family members at the helm of the organization, but it was always a professionally run organization. At no point did we take decisions in the interest of the family. So in fact, both of us have an unspoken rule that we will always do what is right for the company and all the stakeholders of the company. And we have our differences, we have our arguments, but always the argument is on what is better for the company and not what is good for me or what is good for him. So taking yourself out of the equation, making the company's mission the primary objective is another part of the organization's ethos. And this applies to everybody in the organization. So the way we hire people who put the organization first, who are not driven by ego or their own importance, and our hiring processes, our working culture also takes care of that. So for example, I'll give you an example. Anybody who keeps saying I a lot in a conversation raises a danger signal for us that this person is too focused on himself. So we have many such things by which we evaluate people who join the company. But one of that is just building saying the enterprise is first. That was one of the other ethos. The other thing is deep science. Dr. Reddy was a scientist. He used to, while he was chairing the company, he spent a lot of time in the lab. And this was hugely motivational for people working on difficult problems. And he tended to attract the best talent from the scientist community. And that also has become part of our nature now. To that, I and Satish, we added professionalism to the organization. We brought in talent at various levels. We changed the ethos of the company from being a local Hyderabadi company to a company which attracts the best of people, irrespective of where they are from. And we also were in a situation where the organization was dependent on a few good people. They all played a very important role in the growth of the company. But always the company was vulnerable because it depended on a few people. So we had to move the organization from depending on a few key people to a system, to a process, to a widespread bench of talent. So for all this, we had to transform the organization to make it attractive for professionals. So in that sense, we transformed the organization from being a local Hyderabadi organization to an organization which attracts the best of talent worldwide. And so the third thing we did was governance. We strongly believe that business is a force for good, and it should maximize the value for all stakeholders, not just the owners, not just the shareholders, not just the employees, but create value for customers, for shareholders, for the communities we operate in, and for the general public. So this is another important principle that we adopt. So in that interest, we have a very strong governance system. Governance, I just don't mean board processes, but all the processes that lead to make the company a well-governed company from the bottom till all the way up to the board. And we've been fortunate to have been guided by a very strong board of eminent people from all over the world. And we provide this time and space for the board to contribute to the organization. So the institution was built on deep science and technology, great people practices, and good governance. So this is, I would say, something that we did well and has led to the success we had. We had many failures, don't get me wrong. We had numerous failures. Most recently, 3-4 years back, we were hit by the FDA and then we had to come back. But each time we had a setback, we came back with resilience. It has made us much stronger. And in a way, it has showed us something that we didn't know. It was a learning process. So I don't take the crises negatively. I take them as learning opportunities for the organization and for the organization to emerge strongly. There's no organization which just goes vertically up. uh, each company has to face its problems and resolve them and be resilient. And that's what we were. I don't know if that answers your question.
It does, except I think you were too modest at the beginning. And I say this because very briefly, as associated with a philanthropic initiative that the late Dr. Anji Reddy had. I was volunteering to help him brand it along with the effort of a couple of other entrepreneurs. And I look back of the four great entrepreneurs who started that particular initiative and four companies that backed it, two have disappeared because of some kind of values issue. And Ready Lab stands strong. It's amazing. So a lot of respect for your organization. But I like to push you further on this aspect.
Sure.
Family businesses are tricky. And in India, most businesses are family. Family businesses like to be professional. Some succeed, a lot of them don't. There's also the issue of succession. A whole generation has moved, in the family to building the organization to the next level. It is great when the next generation is so wonderful, as I think most people in the market, people who know you would agree, both Ms. Satish and you have, been like not just the next generation, but the next level of generation in terms of entrepreneurs, professionals. What happens to family businesses when this clash becomes a challenge? I mean, it hasn't in the case of Reddy, but if you could just throw a little more thing on this, how does it work? How do you keep the family at a lower level of importance when the family is running it? And this pressure to create value at a very rapid scale, pressure for the listed companies on a quarterly basis, pressure from the banks when they've lent you money to, churn profits, pressure from peer groups, and so on and so forth. When that kind of a value creation pressure is there, a sense comes into entrepreneurs, especially the smaller and medium ones, that perhaps we cannot build value with values. I have to compromise to do business in different countries. The governance in such, the government is corrupt, systems kind of creep in. So please reflect for me the conflict between family and professional values and the perceived, maybe misconception of a conflict between values and creating value.
So you're asking me a very personal question, but I don't believe that you have to compromise. So I start there by saying we need not compromise to build value. You may want to compromise when you want to build something very fast without providing value to your customers. If you just want to make a lot of money and become very rich, that's different from building a business. So you have to be clear about what your goals are. Do you want to become do you want to be the wealthiest man in town by whatever means? Then it's not business. Do you want to build an enterprise which solves a problem uniquely, drives innovation, provides a service which society needs, and in that process create an organization which stands as a force for good and creates value for all its stakeholders? That's how I look at business. And it doesn't matter whether it's a family business, whether it's a public business, whether it's a listed business, professional business or not. They're only good businesses and not so good businesses, however the ownership is. And in my view, there is no need to compromise. I think if you're providing value to your customers and they perceive the value, you will be successful. If you do it better than your competition, you will be rewarded with market share. If your costs are low enough, you will make profits. And there will always be temptations to do the wrong thing, but that is everywhere in life. Do you want to fall prey to temptations, or do you want to live a straight life? This is a personal decision for each entrepreneur to make.
I'd like to now, you obviously work with so many suppliers, so many, not just individuals, but small organizations. One of the crux of, if you see an Indian economy, the crux of our success, our growth depends on MSMEs, the smaller companies. They're lots more in number. They take care of a larger part of the business. They are the ones that really keep it all linked together. My question to you is, do you think there are any differences in the kind of, for example, the structure, the strategy, the systems you spoke about? Are they relevant only to big companies? What about small companies? What about companies with 10, 20 people, or companies with turnover of less than 10 crores?
Yeah.
And also reflect on what kind of a role and responsibility a big company has, a corporate has, in also grooming the smaller organizations, if any.
Yeah. Sure, you're very right. So at a given phase in an organization, certain things become important. I've been through that journey also. When I joined the company, which was called Keminor at the time, the revenue was 30 crores. Today, the combined revenue is close to 17,000 crores. We went through that journey. In the initial years, my focus was not on professionalizing. It was on surviving, paying the bills, creating enough value to meet my commitments. So first instinct for a startup should be survival. Survival, taking care of your cash flow, taking care of your costs, having enough credit in the bank, having enough capital to allow the business to function. That's important when you're small. When you become a little bigger, then growth becomes a driver of the organizational agenda. Then you look at how to improve your product profile, your portfolio, your marketing presence, and all of that. Then you go on to build other things. Then you globalize. Then you look at people, all these issues. So it depends on the life cycle of the company, where you are, that what becomes important. At any point, all of them are equally relevant, but some things become more important than others, depending on the stage at which your company is. For small companies, I think it's important to be financially viable. It's important to have enough capital to take you through the troughs like what we are witnessing right now and face the challenges, and also keep your people together, keep them motivated to continue with you and all of that. And for medium-sized companies, the challenges are different. And if you're looking at the long term, I always have to think at the long term. When you're looking at the long term, you have to see what values you're creating in the organization, what kind of people you're hiring, what kind of systems you're creating to create sustainability in the organization. So there's no one size fits all for any business. You talked about small companies and large companies. I'd like to tell you that it's the duty of large companies to take care of small companies, but it is not. We are all in the business of business. We all have to compete for ourselves. We have to create value. We have to be fair. We have to be ethical. We have to meet our commitments. But, will I give up my business to a smaller company because they're small? I don't think so. So capitalism is about competition, and competition is about survival of the fittest, and that won't change. Of course, the government has a role in promoting entrepreneurship, promoting startups, for creating the ecosystem for business, making life easy for businessmen. But for a company like mine, I'd like to look at them as strategic partners in our journey, treat them fairly, create relationships which will last. But that's it. Beyond that, it is a business relationship.
Now I'd like to have Usha Garu come in and as a co-anchor of mine this afternoon and ask Ms. Prasad a few questions as well. Usha Manegaru.
Before you start, I've seen your company's equipment in many of our plants. So I remember seeing polemen everywhere from last 30 years.
Thank you, Prasad. Thank you so much. And actually, it is really a dream for me to talk to you. And talking in this platform is it's a boon. It's really a boon for me. And I would like to ask you, what should one do to become an effective leader?
That's not an easy question to answer. Effectiveness is situational. It depends on what you're trying to do. I will not be able to advise you on this, but I'll share what I look for in my leaders. And maybe, from there you can get anything from my experience maybe. The first thing I look for is intelligence and integrity. Both are important. Integrity with intelligence is dangerous. And integrity without intelligence or competence is really, it's useless to be a very ethical person, but no capability. So, but intelligence, integrity are two things I'd look at. Third thing I'd look at is how does a person get along with others? Are they people who can work with others, who can work with teams, who can build teams, who can align people, all of that. These are three fundamental things I look in any person, whether the lowest level or highest level. Integrity, competence or intelligence, and the ability to get along with others. So this would be the foundational layer. Now, depending on the role, I would look at other characteristics like charisma, if he's a large people leader, the ability to learn new things, if he's a scientist, if he's a marketing leader, his ability to communicate effectively, those are all skills I would look at. But the three generic qualities I would look at is competence, integrity, and the ability to get along with others, or emotional intelligence, some fancy words people use, but really how do they get along with others?
Thank you. It's a very valuable point for someone to learn. And now it's time to move from gender equity to actually having women in positions of power, both in organizations and government. How should government and companies think and act on this?
First thing I want to tell you is society is really not gender balanced today. Companies are nowhere close to being gender balanced. We are part of the gender balance index in this country, which is supposed to be a recognition, but our women folk constitute less than 15%. I think it is 13-14% of the total strength of the company. So there's a lot for companies to do to get to balance. Gender balance means when there are 100 people, 50 should be women. If there are 10 leaders in the organization, there should be at least 5, or at least close to that. There are very few parts of our organization where we have that. In some countries, we do have gender balance or more than gender balance. In Russia, I think we have more than 70% women. In some of the East European countries, we have good women teams. US is slightly better. But in India, we really struggle with this. We have only one leader in our management council, the head of HR. We have 2 board members out of 8 independent directors. 2 women are on the board. So we have a long way to go. And I remember visiting Yale University long back, and I saw a sculpture there, which was just a big piece of rock with a hole in the middle and a spiral going around and ending at the hole where the hole was spouting some water. So there are a series of numbers, 0, 0, 0, and then 2, 4, 8, 12, and then it stopped at some 4,000 something. It was just a striking piece of architecture there, a simple rock designed by a famous architect called Maya Lin, who also did the Washington War Memorial. And no explanation about the numbers. So I asked people around, what are these numbers? They said this is the number of women who enrolled as students in Yale University. For many years, it was 0, 0, 0, 0. And then it stopped at a point at which they achieved gender parity. That means the number of women and the number of men students were the same. We are far away from getting to parity. And I think we have a lot more to do as a country, as the whole world, corporate sector, government, to really improve the level of gender balance in the organization, in society, everywhere. I'm glad organizations like you are doing a lot to promote women leadership qualities in women and taking a very active role in their development. We need to do a lot more.
Thank you, sir. Uh, Being a head of organization, I'm taking care of finance and administration for my company and HR. And I see that women are there in many critical roles. And we have about 40% women in our organization.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. Coming to CSR, so it's obvious that environment should go beyond being a CSR mandate. How should companies deep-root sustainability into our business cycles?
This is a very important question and also a very tough one to answer, because whatever we do has an environmental impact. You take a flight, your carbon emission is there. You produce something, you're using fuel to burn and generating CO2. You're using up water of the system. So this is something we have to do in a much more deep-rooted way, not just meet obligations. So most companies are looking at meeting regulation, what limits that we have to meet and go there. But I think we have to go well beyond regulation. And some companies have achieved carbon neutrality, water neutrality, and using renewable energy for everything that they're doing. I think we have to do a lot more, and we need systemic changes. Coal is not going to be a sustainable fuel anymore, and we have to move away from coal. We have to move away from all fossil fuels. I sometimes worry that there is no way we can make this planet sustainable unless populations reduce. With the current rate of growth, the current rate of growth of industry, current rate of growth of consumption, it's impossible to achieve sustainability in the true sense. And I think it should start with each individual's consuming less, and then companies looking at consuming less, conserving, and taking on sustainability goals. One has to look 50 years out, not 2 years, 3 years, because these are goals which can't be met in our lifetime.
Thank you, sir. Sriram, over to you.
Thank you so much, Usha Garu, for those lovely questions, and Ms. Prasad, thank you for really. I must share a small personal experience. I found myself being interviewed by Dr. Reddy Labs for a job about 17 years ago. And the head of communications asked me, what is it you can offer to Reddy Labs? And I said, without pausing for a second, intelligence with integrity. I missed the third part. Had I had this conversation with you 17 years ago, would have been amazing for me. But I'd like to now take you to an area where you are really, though you are passionate about it, matters a lot to you. It's been the real formula for your ability to have transformed Reddy Labs research. You are a deep science company. The mankind today is facing newer and newer kinds of problems in terms of diseases. Medicine's expectations have changed. The manner of healthcare is changing rapidly. The relationship between governments and healthcare providers and citizens is changing. Amidst this context, I have a very serious question to ask because I never understand it. How good is India in terms of research? It is my own personal view that we are a very third-rate, third world kind of a society when it comes to research in fundamental discoveries. We pretend that we are very good, especially we fire from the fact that Indians abroad have made it very big. But I don't see an Indian physicist or chemist or in medicine getting a Nobel Prize working out of India. I'm not bothered about nationality so much. I don't see Indian universities doing research. It's just a way to somehow get published in a few papers. And that's the kind of race it really is. Do we have the passion, the competence, the integrity, the zeal, and whatever else it takes to be the country the world will look to? Today, I don't think anybody says, oh, the vaccine for coronavirus can come from India. I don't think so. But then I don't know, maybe I'm suffering from some wrong notion or bias. Please tell us, how good are we as a research destination? And what if we are not good? Can we do really to change it in a really big way?
Okay, I'll answer this. And firstly, I want to tell you that you're lucky you didn't join Dr. Reddy's because you went on to write books, became a celebrated author, now an editor, instead of being in some corporate communications department of a company. So you've done well. You raised a very important issue about innovation in India, scientific innovation, fundamental innovation in India. So for innovation to flourish, you need ecosystems. You need a very strong university system. You need a strong funding system, a public funding system, as well as private equity and venture capital ecosystem. You need that institutional mechanism of both public funding, private funding, and you need strong university system. The third thing you need is people who are driven to make money through innovation. We have a problem in all three areas. The government hasn't really liberated education, higher education. We have an outmoded AICTE ruling the roost. We've got private universities, but the private universities are more money-making machines rather than creating original research. Faculty once hired into the university system, public university system, are secure jobs. There's no pressure to do original work or publish or anything. The government funding is really very meager. If you look at the total funding for original research in India, and if you see the nations which have done well have a very good public funding system, whether it's National Institutes of Health in the US or the British system or the European systems. Even China, for example, has really pumped in huge amounts of money into scientific innovation. So public funding is another problem. The private equity VC community is just starting to evolve. So we don't have all of these institutional systems fully mature yet. And you have to appreciate that India is a relatively young country. We were ruled by the British for many years, who didn't really invest in developing the country to its potential. And we are getting there slowly but steadily. We are seeing the growth of innovation, growth of enterprises from India becoming global names and all of that. But I have to say that you can't write off India that there's not much happening here. There's a lot happening here. And there is enormous innovation in the private sector happening. If you see even this, COVID, when it hit, India will be an important part of the solution. If you take India out of the equation, the world will suffer. India has the capacity to supply vaccines at a scale no other country can. India has the capacities to supply active pharmaceutical ingredients like no other country can supply. Generic drugs, no other country can supply. China may come close, but even China is behind India in these aspects. Maybe in certain molecules, in certain fermentation technologies, China is a little ahead. But if you look at the global need for medicines, vaccines, all of that, India is the part of the solution, central to the solution. And even anybody out there in the world will acknowledge this. We didn't get here without innovation. Same thing, we are seeing a lot of innovation in information technology. We are looking at artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of this in a big way. We're seeing renewable energy coming in. We're seeing a lot of interesting startups in digital solutions. I think we, as a country, we have not given an unfair advantage to our Indian businessmen, Indian entrepreneurs. Countries which have done well have protected their industries. If you take China, China protected Tencent, they protected Alibaba, they protected Baidu, they're protecting all their industries against global competition. whereas we have not done that. In fact, many of our leading companies are not funded by Indians, they're funded by the Chinese, SoftBank and Chinese. So maybe government has to relook at the role of how to build Indian enterprises. Because today you can't become a superpower with a low GDP. Military power is not relevant anymore. It is economic might. And China is sitting there with 8 to 10 times our GDP. So we may need far-sighted leaders who will invest in Indian enterprises, in Indian innovation systems, and upgrade our education and healthcare systems. And I'm really hoping that we will see such leaders.
This really brings me to the closure of nearly the first 2/3 of the conversation. I was given a very strict warning by Priya Garu not to use the word COVID or China in the first half of the discussion, saying everybody is so relentlessly bombarded with this word coronavirus, coronavirus, COVID. Don't ask Mr. Prasad any question about that till the end. So I'll keep it to the end. Now I'd like to focus a little on the personal side. So Mr. Prasad, there is the stereotype in India, that successful people are all about work, 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 work. But the more I've interacted with personalities, successful people, I've realized it's never the case. Could you kind of throw a little bit of light on how you view your relationship as a person with your work? How do you do this work-life balance in these kind of digital days where you have a mobile and you're chained and your time zones are practically the 24 hours? You have, call before the sunrise, and then you have somebody else in another part of the world working with you long after it's midnight for you. So please kind of take me to the person that Mr. Prasad is, and how did he navigate changing context of life with work and life, with his own personal life, family, and
Um, I'm a poor example for work-life balance. There is no balance. Work is life for me. Work was life for me. I'm saying work was life because we now have a professional CEO who's taken over the operations and is responsible for P&L. I help him succeed, but till he came on, it was a large part of my life. Mostly, it was overwhelmingly work that drove me, and family, of course. I always spend enough time with my family. Everything else took a backseat for the first 20, 25 years. After that, I started developing interests in nature, wildlife, photography, things like that. But even now, that's a very small component in my life. Work is still a large part of my life. So I'm not somebody who can say, well, there is going to be work-life balance and you can do both. I guess you can prioritize some things. And I did prioritize my family, but work was overwhelmingly my life. So,
but Usha Garu was very curious to know, as many others, about you are a photographer of some accomplishment and acumen. How did you manage time, and how do you, going away from laboratories and corporate boardrooms and meetings and
yeah.
flights to different countries, and to suddenly go into the wild with a camera and
So I was always interested in wildlife. I'm also a member of the bird watching society and used to go on weekend trips with them. But photography is a recent thing. It came with a friend of mine who taught me photography, a guy named Suresh Chitturi. We both are fellow photographers. He taught me a lot of the techniques, and I got into photography seriously along with him. And it's been a very rewarding experience. Um, the photographs are so good because of the places we go to. You go to spectacular places, you do get spectacular photographs. Nothing to do with my skill as such, but I do enjoy photography.
you're also an expert on China in a sense. Reddy Labs has bet in a big way on China. I all know you also have a huge, a lot in US, a lot in Russia, but China is unique. You bet big on China. Did you ever anticipate a risk where the country you kind of possibly source a lot of APIs from would become the enemy number one for almost all other countries on earth one fine day? And is China going to collapse? Or will we have to contend with the fact that China will always be the place most businesses globally will go to? And is there any merit in the hope a lot of Indians have that post-coronavirus, there is a possibility that huge businesses may not will, but can migrate from China to India, especially American and European? Your thoughts on that aspect, please.
So I'm going to be a little contrarian on this. There is a lot of negativity on China today because of they blame China for the virus. And maybe justified or not, I'm not going to be a judge of that. But I believe that China is going to be one of the strongest countries in the world, if not the strongest. It is also it's already one of the strongest. If you compare China and US, the two dominant economies of the world, where would you lay your bet today? China is ruled by the Communist Party. The Communist Party, up till a certain level, even maybe a mayor of Beijing level, is a pure meritocracy. The best talent goes to government. The progression within the government is strictly merit-based. There is a level of competence in government you will not see in any government in the world. There's an element of that working for the country. If you want to go and start a business, the level of enablement is superb. The way they protect their own industries is unparalleled. You see how many people came out of poverty in China. It is the biggest in the history of the world. The number of people who came out of poverty into prosperity or into well-being. No other country has got this kind of accomplishment. They've overtaken the US last year on the number of patents they filed. They are leaders in artificial intelligence, renewable energy, biotech. They've identified 8 sunrise industries where they will overinvest in. This is a powerful country. Never make the mistake of underestimating them. On the other hand, you have US, great nation, amazing. This was the century of America. They led the world. They had enormous innovations. They were the leader of the free world, democracy at work. Look where they are now. You have a president who's, saying things which almost sounds insane sometimes. So, sorry for that comment. And then there is social unrest. Look at the way they dealt with the pandemic. Now suddenly it is the death rate is so horrible there. With all this, where will you bet today? To think that the businesses will move out of China and they come to India, India has to do something special. How are they doing it? How are they enabling their industries? How many of you industrialists feel supported by the governments here, by the state government, by the central government, in terms of making it easy to do business? Ease of doing business is among the worst in India. So, all this talk is talk. Action on the ground doesn't show a shift. And the supply chains from China are working. We get our materials on time from China now. So, a lot of this is, I don't know what kind of news we're getting, but I don't, buy this argument that China is going down or China is the enemy or everything will shift out of China. I don't see it.
There will be, in a very short while, we'll open up to question answers. And my absolute last question, in a way, is anticipated it, Mr. Prasad. He's not a successful businessman for nothing. He knew my last question would be, but I'd like to kind of bring it back, Mr. Prasad. The one last question from my side before the audience is the wonderful members, presidents, past presidents, committee members of FLO will ask you various questions and they can all start using the feature down. And I'd like to remind everyone of one fact. We are on Zoom, not Namaste, an Indian product supposedly which can take care of this too. So much so for information technology excellence. Zoom is a Chinese product. At least the founder is Chinese American. So this tells you a very bizarre thing. But I'll go back to Ms. Prasad and ask you this. What should India do? What can Telangana do? Or now that we have a huge economic problem, not just the epidemic, but at some point we all realize we are in a near zero growth. Who knows, the R word and D word shouldn't be used, but who knows? So what can India do? What can Telangana and Hyderabad do? Your words of wisdom for the policymakers.
I'm not going to call it wisdom. I'm not going to call it advice. But I'll ask one thing of the government, whether the state or central government. Respect businessmen. Support businessmen. Don't think of them that we have to control them. We have to do this and all that. But, this country will depend on businessmen for its growth, for its progress, for its revenues, for its employment, for everything. So give us the respect that we deserve. I mean, I say respect, not the big guys like, Tata's, Birlas, or even big companies like us, but every entrepreneur must deserve great respect when they walk into a government office, when they walk into a politician's office. If they do that and they encourage even by words, that will make a lot of difference. We are, everybody was out to control us. Think of the businessman as a criminal, not as somebody who's so
Very true.
one advice I would give anybody if they ask me.
Thank you, Ms. Prasad. I never met you, I've heard about you today, interacting with you, and the answer you gave in the end, trust me, hats off. Won't offer a warm handshake in thought distancing norms, but a big namaste to you. Salute. You're an extraordinary person and part of an extraordinary organization. I hope Reddy Labs does more amazing things in times to come. Everybody expects them to. I wish you a greater success. And now, the most exciting part of this interaction, when I keep my mouth shut and pass it on for the audience, wonderful participants to start asking questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Priya Garu.
Thank you, Sriram, and thank you, G. Prasad, sir. I must say, if you all will allow me, I am so overwhelmed. I want to, give it up. It's been such an engrossing 1 hour. I really, I'm at a loss for words, but what you said about leading simpler lives that don't burden the earth, what you said about taking oneself out of the equation and focusing on the mission of the company, putting the enterprise first, walking the talk, being a force for good, all these are they have such great resonance. And what you said about no compromise for building value or intelligence, integrity, and I summed up what you said otherwise, and I said integrity, intelligence, and maybe integration with the company itself when one works for a company. I think these are values, life lessons, business lessons that all of us should memorize and put into practice. So thank you so much for that wonderful conversation to both of you. And now we'll move to our question hour. Of course, we have many requests in the Zoom room up there. We will start with our very special guest from Chennai, Chairperson Flow Chennai, Rinku Macheri.
Good evening, Flow Hyderabad. It's really a privilege to be with you this evening. Good evening, Prasad. This is Rinku from Chennai, and it's been an absolute pleasure to hear you for the last 1 hour. I think you inspire by just being your humble self and by sharing your story. My question to you is that the youth in our country today is one that has grown up with, ideals of a global instant gratification, global landscape, everything. And today, as they stand at this moment of crisis, what is your message to them?
Honestly, I don't have a message for them. I actually learn a lot from them. The younger generation, I mean, you said they're instant gratification, but actually I find them much more aware than our generation. They don't want to do anything which will spoil the environment. They don't use plastic. There are a lot of things I see in them, a lot of good in them. They are figuring it out faster than us, better than us. And I think the next generation gives me a lot of hope. I want to learn from them. I'm not going to give them any advice.
Thank you.
Past Chair, FLO Hyderabad, Reddy would like to ask a question now.
Hi, Prasad. It's
Hi.
been a pleasure listening to your, honest opinions and your very sensible views. One thing now, with the 2 months of lockdown, pollution has come down. I go up to my terrace, I can see hillocks, which I haven't seen in my life before. I never knew they existed, like they just sprouted up. So now the economy has to get back onto its tracks. Everybody will start moving around, doing the things. What do you think we can do, or points to keep in mind as industry leaders or otherwise to keep it in control? What can we do on our part? The main 1 or 2 things you can think of.
This is a very hard question, Rekha. Can we do out many things that we are used to in life? Can we live alone at home, lock ourselves home to clean the air? We can't. Can we do without all the things that we have gotten used to in the last 40, 50 years? We can't. How do you correct a whole system which has gone far ahead of the sustainable carrying capacity of this planet? I don't know the answer, really. But what I do think is that each of us, if we personally change our lives, our lifestyles, it may make a difference. So we survived for 2 months without many things in our life.
Yeah.
We realized that we can live without many things. All our fancy stuff that we buy, all the things, we didn't really need them. So, are we ready to do that? And in readjusting the economy to a reduced consumption, we'll create a recession also. So we are on a treadmill which doesn't stop. It goes faster and faster. So I really don't have an answer to your question. How do we bring nature back? Unless each of us is willing to dramatically change our lifestyles and face the consequences of unemployment, businesses being deeply impacted, economy is going bust. I don't know. I really think that's why I started out saying capitalism today is unbridled. It is not sustainable. We have to redefine what capitalism is. We have to redefine what personal success is. For us, personal success was having a large house, large car, many clothes, or whatever. Is that what really success is? I mean, for us as a species, if each of us goes there, what happens to the earth? So it's not a question that has an answer, easy answer.
Difficult, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Rekha. Mr. D. Narendra from iClean Technology has a question for our guest.
Good evening, Mr. Prasad.
Good evening.
We are associated with DRL for a long time, and we look up to the company. And I did bump into you, like Mr. Srinivas has asked you a question on how you manage the work life. So I did see you at some concerts. I did see you at some moon walks.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, what is your opinion to the startup ecosystem right now? Like getting sold to bigger companies. Many of the startups now people are getting into startups like one is building businesses and one is making money. In your conversation, you were mentioning that, right? To the younger generation of entrepreneurs. So is it okay of starting something with an idea of getting sold to a bigger company?
Absolutely. Why not? So the point I was making is making money at any cost. That is bad. But making money is fine. We all are in business to make money. So if a way of making money is to start a business, create value, and then exit, that's completely legitimate. Why not? And sometimes a business is better in the hands of others. So exiting a startup is is a normal thing. Everybody does it.
Thank you.
We have FICCI chairperson, Mr. Muralidharan with us, who would like to ask a question, and welcome, Mr. Muralidharan.
Can't see
Yeah,
him.
Pranay?
he's not yet there, Priya.
No, he was here. Okay, maybe he stepped out for a moment. Let's move on to I'll call upon past chair Jyotsna Angara to ask her question, please.
Hi, Prasad. This is Jyotsna.
Yeah, hi.
Firstly, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today. I loved the way you said we need to bring in certain system changes to capitalism. So I was just thinking, and I thought maybe we can start saying compassionate or conscious capitalism is the way forward. My question to you is because society looks up to CEOs for innovation. The same society always judges and scrutinizes the decisions of the CEO, very often on sustainability. Now, triple bottom line is the main system being used by businesses today to assess the profits they are making through corporate responsibility solutions. Based on this premise, my question is, what has been the guiding factors or principles at DRL to develop a leadership pipeline? And how do you manage the change towards building a sustainable ecosystem? 3 Ps of sustainability: people, planet, profit within your organization. And the second question that I have, which is very women-centric, is how many women, whatever be their levels within the organization, are involved in your women-centric policy making? Because you spoke about that DRL has a long way to go. So what do you think is the problem, the women or the men that are causing this delay in DRL becoming a very gender parity or gender equal company?
Okay. The first question you talked about is how we look at sustainability.
Exactly.
So we internally feel that creating value for all stakeholders without compromising the interest of one against the other
Right.
is the route to make sustainable value profits. So you create value for your customers, you create value for your shareholders, you create value for your employees, and you create value for society through generating employment, not harming the environment, being a positive force in society, all of those. When you achieve value for all and increasing value for all, not trading off. So not reducing the profits because I have to do CSR, or that's a loser's argument. If you can create increasing value for all stakeholders simultaneously, that is the sign of true sustainability for us. That's how we define sustainability, and that's how we practice sustainability. You talked about women. So I don't want to blame anybody on this, but it's not easy to even get enough women candidates. Having said that, we can do a lot more. We can do a lot more, and just talking to Archana, my colleague, to say that whenever we are hiring for a senior position, before the interview, at least in the slate, we should have 1 or 2 women candidates as part of the shortlist. That will force us to look at women. Otherwise, the first top 10 will always be men. But if we say that we need to see in the shortlist at least 1 or 2 women, that will increase the chances. This is not a policy for us, but we're debating this. We've done a lot to make it easier for women to work at Dr. Reddy's, but it's made some difference, but not enough. Supply side also, we have constrained. natural women's life stages, their obligations in the family, all these also have a role, but all said and done, we can do a lot more. We can do a lot more as a company, we can do a lot more as society, we can do a lot more.
One question that I had for you, because we are a chamber of commerce, a voice of policy with the government and stuff. We know that many of the developed countries have not invested much in India, especially for scientific cooperation. And they've invested a hell of a lot in China instead. Do you think this needs to change now? And what do you think a FLO or a FICCI can do in this area?
It is not any one thing that can bring in investment. There has to be, the ease of doing business is the biggest problem we have. We've actually dropped on that list. Even with the pro-government, pro-business government at the center, supposedly, we've dropped down the list. We are in over 140 or 150 in the ease of doing business rankings. Not in the top, why will people invest in us? So we have to do many things to make India an attractive destination for investment. And you don't need to really rely on investment coming from abroad. We have a lot of internal resources, internal competence, internal capabilities, and we can really build a lot within our country. We can do the right things. And if we can enable businesses. And it's my view that government must see businesses as an important leg of nation building.
Nation building, absolutely.
Economy, absolutely. Everything. When they do that and then they give due respect to business and see business as a force for good, that's when this country will go forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, Anvesh Manni from Polman Group would like to ask a question.
Good evening, Mr. Prasad. This is Anvesh. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how your role has changed over the years since you took over the reins from Dr. Reddy Garu through the growth phase of the company, and now where you've taken a backseat and you're grooming the next generation of leaders. So I was wondering if you talk about that.
This is a long story, but in a brief 5 or 6 stages of my life, the first few years it was built on making the businesses work, creating enough surpluses to reinvest and build the company's business model as a viable business model. The next 5 to 10 years was in institution building, professionalizing the company, attracting talent, creating policies for making the organization more and all of that. Then it was globalization, growth, mergers and acquisitions, internationalization, all of that. The last few years, I focused a lot more on science, technology, and people. Governance is well set, so I don't have to intervene a lot. And now I'm more into a mentorship role. I mentor high potential people. I mentor the science and innovation effort. And I take a keen interest in people practices and people. And of course, I support my CEO, who's an expat, and he's done great things for the company since he joined.
Thank you.
Our social outreach head, Ms. Radha Rani, would like to ask a question. Radha?
Prasad Garu, it's nice listening to you about talking about so many parameters. I would like to know, how do you keep your teams motivated to deliver on a regular basis?
So firstly, I think motivation has to come from within. They have to believe in the impact they're creating. The company has a very strong focus on making products affordable, bringing innovative products to the market, and we are driven by the mission statement of good health can't wait. Intrinsically, you have to know that your work makes a difference to patients out there, makes a difference to healthcare systems out there, and that's how you get their intrinsic motivation and their discretionary effort. You have to take care of hygiene factors like pay, incentives, and all that. But I would consider them as hygiene factors. Motivation has to come from the mission of the company.
Thank you. And if I can elaborate on that, how does automation help the production processes, sir?
Automation is fantastic for driving productivity. And we want to move away from, I mean, all companies want to move away from people using people's muscle power to mechanization, digitization, automation, all of that. And that's a big trend in India now. Everybody's talking about Industry 4.0, using data, digital, and for all that you need, mechanization and automation.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
We have time for one last question. EC member Neha Reddy, I saw your hand go up. Can you please ask your question now? Pranay, Neha Reddy, please.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Prasad. I always found your interviews very intelligent and insightful. I'm a second generation entrepreneur myself. We have a biotechnology company. And my question is actually two-part. First is when you were talking about how you and Mr. Satish Reddy took the company global, what was your biggest challenge apart from talent acquisition? And the second question is, how long do you think it took for you to take the company global? I mean, for you to say that you took, I mean, Dr. Reddy's is now an international company.
It didn't happen in one go. It was a process of many years which took the company global. Our first important beachhead outside India was the US. US was our largest market, and we partnered with a local person there who was a business associate. We built our US presence first. Then in parallel, we had a very entrepreneurial leader who built our Russia business. He was actually a defense spokesperson and who knew Russian, and that is why we hired him. And then we slowly expanded our presence in emerging markets. So it happened over many years. Even now, we enter 1 or 2 new countries every year. We also exit some countries. So it's an ongoing process. I think it took us about 10 years to really say that we had covered at least about 15, 20 countries. But we were always international. We were always an export-driven company. So it came natural to us to go global.
And what was your biggest challenge?
So, it's oversimplified if I say there's one biggest challenge. There are many challenges in life. Life is messy. Every day we have different challenges. And every year it's a different challenge. I think in the initial days, it was coping up with the global demands for quality, for regulatory systems, for legal understanding, for contracting. Those were skills we had to build ground up because India didn't have those skills at that time. Today it's widespread. Today it's the different kinds of challenges that come in. Supply chain disruptions, complying with listing requirements of the US. So various kinds of challenges for globalization. It will be oversimplifying if I say there's one challenge.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for answering all those questions with such great patience and clarity. It seemed like another interview altogether. Thank you so much. I now request Senior Vice Chairperson Uma Chigurupati to deliver her vote of thanks.
Hi, Uma.
Hi. A very good evening to all of you and Prasad. So it's an inspirational interaction. Great companies around the world start with the vision of the founder to change the world. With love, passion, and sometimes out of pure genius, the company grows and grows. When the founder exits for the next generation, to make it more successful, to maintain the same commitment and values is a very tough task. To carry the legacy and the business forward, the person has to have highest motivational levels, knowledge, and business acumen. Very few will have all these qualities and commitment. We have interacted with that kind of person today. Prasad, I'm using this platform to express what I always thought of you. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us and giving an insight into many aspects of business and leadership in particular. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Uma. Thank you so much. It's nice to see you.
Mr. Sriram Karri, thank you for your help in making this program very interesting and informative. Your contribution is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, so much. It's a privilege to be here and honored to have had a interaction with somebody like Mr. Prasad, and always a great delight to be at a FLO event. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
My sincere thanks to all the dynamic and wonderful past presidents for attending this program. It's a great encouragement for all of us. Thank you. And I thank all our supportive past chairs for their participation. My heartfelt thanks to all the sponsors for their generosity and support. iClean Technologies Private Limited, Mr. Gopi. Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today and all the support.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Hemair Systems India Limited, Mr. Vikas Chandra. Are you there? Thank you so much. Polman Instruments Private Limited, Anvesh. Thank you for being with us today. Thank you. Thank you for the support. Snyder Electric, Mr. Sudhir. Thank you so much. Transcom Impex Private Limited, Mr. Sridhar Reddy. Thank you so much. RBC, our branding partner, Mr. Ramakant. Thank you so much. Hello. So once again, I thank you all on behalf of our committee and myself. A big appreciation to my most enthusiastic and ever smiling committee members for all the work put in behind the scenes for bringing out this wonderful program. Congratulations, guys. I thank the IT team for all the technical support. Finally, all the members of our chapter and the members and chairs of other chapters who are here with us, media and the viewers out there, a big thanks to all of you. Before I conclude, a small quote about the environment. Earth provides enough to satisfy every man's needs, but not their greeds. Please remember, it's our responsibility towards conserving the nature. That's our responsibility towards the coming generations. Stay safe, stay healthy, have a wonderful evening and a great weekend. Thank you. Namaste.
On behalf of all of us here at the Flow back office, thank you all for being there. It's your support that keeps us going. For ease of operations and greater accessibility, we have added another number to the Flow office. We will soon share it with you. Please download it onto your phone and stay tuned with all that's happening in your organization. Do send in your friend requests to Flow Hyderabad Facebook. We will be accepting inclusions week on week. For any assistance regarding your membership and to advertise in Flow Marketplace, please call our in-house team. Thank you all once again. Namaste.